Welcome to the latest live stream here at Classical Guitar Corner. My name is Simon Powis, and I really appreciate you spending some time with me. It is a live stream now, but if you're watching this on the replay, I do have something I'd like to ask you. If you want to be notified about these live streams in advance and with downloads for any worksheets or exercises we might do, you can go to classicalguitarcorner.com/live and then sign up to the list there. But it's not the normal list. It's a special list where we will notify you about each and every live session that we do just a little bit before with any supplying or ancillary materials. So please go to classicalguitarcorner.com/live if you want to be notified about these events. Of course, you can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, but we are going to be streaming on Facebook in the future as well. So it's very challenging for me to make sure everybody knows that they're very welcome to attend these. But you are, and for those who are interested, I'd love to make sure that I can communicate that. So I hope you're all very well. This is a different kind of stream. In the last two streams, we've done interviews with Ben Verdery and also with Gohar Vardanyan. And today I want to do a bit of teaching. I think it's really great for us to have some focus and do something together. And so know that as we go through these exercises, you'll be doing it alongside maybe 100 or so around the globe. So it's kind of a cool feeling. So please do say hello and say hi to everyone as we're going through these exercises, and say hello in the chat. I know a few friends will be dropping by. But do grab your guitar because we're going to go through some exercises. So what I'd like to do over a span of time is do some workshops, practice workshops where we can play things together, and they're gradually going to get a little more complicated. But one thing that's really nice about the classical guitar is that we can take very simple movements, very simple exercises, and we can focus on things that will impact the rest of our playing. Fundamentals really is the name of the game when it comes to overall ability, in that our sound, the way we move our fingers in the right hand and the left hand, the way we synchronize, the way we articulate, all of those things can be practiced in simple components, and they will affect things at an advanced level, say in repertoire. So I'm going to aim to do some workshops that can be accessible from beginners, but also would be useful for advanced players who are really focusing in on the minutiae and the detail. So today we are going to be working on a simple G major 1-octave scale. We're going to be focusing on thumb technique, and we'll go through the scale as well. So we'll talk a little bit about scale degrees and just finding the notes on the instrument itself. So here's a little bit of fanciness. Here we go. There's there's the right hand thumb. So I hope you all can see that and it's nice and clear. And we're going to be working on this scale today. Scales are excellent tools for us to practice a variety of different aspects. We can do articulation, we can do dynamics, we can do speed, we can do rhythms, we can do synchronization, we can do all sorts of things with scales. It's really a wonderful tool that we get to practice with. So let's start off with, I'm going to actually just talk about the right hand for a moment. So we're going to actually exclusively be using the thumb in this workshop. So the thumb here, we're going to be using it with, you can either rest A, M, and I on the first, second, and third string respectively. That's a nice way for the thumb to have a bit of a reference point and a bit of stability. I don't suggest resting your fingers on the face of the guitar, but rather have them as if they were to play, just about to play a block chord. Very lightly and more or less in playing position where the fingers might be in contact. So from there we're going to be moving our thumb, and you can see that the rest of the hand is quite relaxed. Now this is something you can, for advanced players, or well, beginner through advanced, really can focus on just the relaxation of the right hand as we move that thumb around. So if you notice your pinky, let me do it this way. You can notice your pinky starting to stick up, or your other finger starting to either maybe curl in. That's usually because some kind of tension. And remember that if we relax our hand and bring it up gradually as if there were a pulley system pulling up from the top knuckles, our hand will naturally curl those fingers in, and that's what we're looking for, not the fingers sticking out like a flag or not crunched in and squeezed, but rather just a very natural right hand position. So let's just do a few open strings here, and will help us with the tuning as well. So we're going to play the 6th string first. I'm going to have A, M, and I nice and relaxed on 1, 2, and 3. So we'll do 4 notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the thumb creates an ellipsis shape. So it goes through the string, it clears the adjacent string, and then immediately cycles back so that it comes back to play on that string. And it's quite a quick movement. When we see it, in a practical sense, it seems like it's just going straight through, but really what it is an ellipsis, and the movement back to the starting point is really quite quick. So let's do those 4 notes again and focus on bringing the thumb back to prepare to play. We're not going to rest it on the string, just above the string, ready to play. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that now on the 5th string, the A string. Again, it might help us with the tuning. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now maybe you heard on that 2nd note there, I actually touched the D string. I hit it accidentally. That's something that we can practice just with open strings. A nice warm-up, if you like, for the beginning of your practice session is just open strings, really focusing on consistency of movement. If you can do it once, you can do it 100 times. So it's really about getting that consistency. Let's try that again. 1, 2, here we go. Not only do we have consistency with movement that we can think about, but also tone and dynamics, or how loud the note is, and does the note sound the same each time. If you get this, then that's an inconsistent tone, and so we want to be able to rely on a consistent tone because it's helpful for the music we play. And then finally, let's play the 4th string now, and you might find yourself touching your index finger as it's resting on the 3rd string, and that's okay. So you probably make contact there on that first tip joint. So ready? 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So hopefully we've cleared up a bit of tuning. If you want to check with a digital tuner right now, that might be good, because otherwise we might be very out as we go through. Now, let's just walk through the left-hand fingering for this scale. You may know it. If you know it very well and it's very easy for you, then I suggest focusing in on the placement of your fingers, right up snug against the fret. Think about your hand position overall, that we're not rotating unnecessarily. We keep the fingers nice and close to the strings. These are all kinds of things you can think about at a more advanced level. But let's just walk through now the scale. So we're going to go on the 6th string. We are in 2nd position, which means the 1st finger plays the 2nd fret, 2nd finger plays the 3rd fret, 3rd finger plays the 4th fret, and 5th finger plays the 5th fret. That's 2nd position. So if I say 2, that means that we're going to be playing the 3rd fret, because as we go through the frets, we're actually not going to be deviating until we get to arpeggios. So let's go through the scale. So we start off on the G with the 2nd finger, that's 3rd fret. So we go 2, 4. Then we move to the 5th string, 1, 2, 4. Then we go to the 4th string, 1, 3, 4. Let's go through that again, starting back on the G. I'll count us in. 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Going back down is usually a little more of a mind bender if this is new to you, but let's try it anyway. Starting on the 4th finger, 5th fret, 4th string, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if that's a little confusing for you at the moment, don't worry, we're going to go over this quite a number of times before we start adding more complexities. So, one really nice thing to do in scales, and one way to use scales is for fingerboard knowledge, fretboard knowledge. And this can be easily done by simply saying the note names out loud. Going through the musical alphabet is usually pretty straightforward, but when we get accidentals, and also when we go from G to A, that can throw us. Also going backwards can throw us a little bit. So remember that we do have one accidental in the key of G major, and before I say it, you can say it to yourself. The accidental is, I need waiting music. That's my waiting music. It is F sharp. So we have, that is the key signature of G major, has one sharp, that's F sharp, and that is the leading tone. So we're going to find it here. It's the 4th fret, 4th string. I'm going to play it with the 3rd finger. So let's go through it now. We're going to say the note names out loud, and please do say it out loud instead of just thinking it, but let's go. So 1, 2, 3, 4. G, A, B, C, D, E is the sharp, F sharp, and G. Now let's go backwards. I'll slow it down. I'll give you 2 beats for each note. 3, starting on G, and G. Next is F sharp, E, D, C, B, A, G. And let's just, for a bonus round, if we're down at G and we're in 2nd position, we actually have this finger here free, ready to play another note. So what's going to be the next note? If we keep going down and play the 2nd fret here, that's going to be F sharp. And the reason I bring that up is it's often very nice to add in the leading tone at the end of a scale run, because it really rounds it out. Have a listen. I also added in the supertonic. I have to remember my scale degree names, because that also rounds it out nicely in a sort of 4/4 time signature. So it's a nice thing to add into your scales if you want to have that nice melodic rounding off of the scale. Okay, so we went through the scale names. Of course, on the replay, you can go back and have a listen to this and work through it on your own time. We're probably moving a little fast right now. Anyway, let's talk about scale degrees. This is just a way for us to work through the scale, get used to it before we proceed. So scale degrees are simply numbers. It's almost a little easier than the note names themselves. So if we start on the G, that's scale degree 1. So we're just going to count up 1 to 7, and then we don't say 8 when we get back to the G. We actually say 1 again, because it returns back to the 1 of the 1st degree of the scale, albeit an octave higher. Okay, so starting off on the G. Ready? We're going to say 1 out loud. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Going back down is a little harder. Starting on 1, 3, 4. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So scale degrees can become very useful for particular ones, for certain notes in particular. So I would say the most important notes to know about is 1, the tonic, and 5, the dominant, and perhaps 7, the leading tone. Such a powerful melodic movement that wants to go back to 1. It really wants to go to 1. So that's why it's an important one to know, because musically, melodically, we treat it with a certain amount of respect. So let's do a little quiz, all right? So let's play the dominant. So that's going to be, dominant is a V, I'm holding up a V, 5, right? So if we start with G is 1, A is 2, B is 3, spam caller is not 4, but C is 4, G 1, A 2, B 3, C 4, and then 5, of course, is D. So we've got tonic and dominant. That's the D is our dominant. Tonic and dominant. So if I were to ask you to play the dominant of G major, the dominant scale degree of G major, we would immediately go with our 4th finger to play D. Now, if I were to ask you to play the leading tone, do we remember what number that is? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It leads. The reason it's called the leading tone is because it leads back to 1. You can hold down and play that F sharp with your 3rd finger, 4th fret, 4th string. And then we really would, I think we should, play the tonic again. Now, just as a little bit of a melodic interest here, something we can use in our music is when we have the leading tone, when we resolve, we often resolve more quietly. It's a very beautiful sounding musical movement, and often it's described as tension to relaxation. The tension comes from the dominant 7 there, that's a chord, and then we go back to the G major. So it's something we can think about, and you can incorporate that kind of musicality into scale practice. You can always make things musical, even if it's an exercise. So we have gone over the note names of the scale. We have gone over the scale degrees, and we've also named some of those scale degrees because they're important. The tonic, the dominant, and the leading tone. That's quite a nice little idea. Okay, so let's start to get into some of the different things we can do with the scale. So we're using our thumb, again, like I went over at the beginning, A, M, and I, resting on the first 3 strings. Let's do, well, actually, no, I'm going to start even simpler. I have a little whiteboard, mini whiteboard with some notes down here. But let's start really simple, okay? We're going to play that scale once up and straight back down, and I want you to focus on the consistency of your notes. I want it to be the same dynamic and the same tone quality. So the same approach to the string, the same attack of the string. Much, much more difficult than it sounds. Play notes the same? Easy. Maybe that's easy on a piano where the mechanics of it are predetermined, but on a guitar, we can easily manipulate things and it's going to give us different sounds. So it's quite a skill to have a consistent sound. So it's something we can work on all the time. Okay, G major 1 octave up and down, flat dynamic, just a nice solid mezzo forte, and a very consistent tone. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I had done that in a recording and I was doing an album just of the G major 1 octave scale, I'd have a couple notes in there for myself where I'd say, maybe it's a little different. So, we can really get a little, actually, obsessed with this. But to a certain degree, it's good because we're really paying attention. And I like to think that when we start to notice things and they start to be, a problem, that's actually a good sign because it means we're listening slightly differently. So, consistency, flat, dynamic. Now, let's try a crescendo, decrescendo. Crescendo, decrescendo as a scale goes up in pitch and then decrescendo is down is a very natural sounding dynamic. It's much more challenging and slightly unnatural to decrescendo up and then crescendo back down. So what we're going to do is actually get louder as we go up and then softer as we go down. And this is, in general, what we can do with the shapes of our melodies. Melodies go up, we can get a little louder. Melodies go down, we can get a little softer. Very generalized, many exceptions to this, but it's a good starting place. So let's do the same thing, G major scale with our thumb. We're going to crescendo start nice and soft, and then nice and loud. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I wonder what your scale, your crescendo and decrescendo sounded like. I can tell you what I know from working with many students is there's a couple of things that are difficult and a couple of things that will help. One thing that is very difficult is making sure you actually have a range of dynamic that you're working within. Often it's a mistake, not a mistake, it's not a great word to use. Often it's an obstacle to start too loud. If we're going to start soft and get loud, we need to give us as much room as possible to grow in dynamic. So let's try that one more time, and I want you to start incredibly softly, just so softly that your right hand thumb, I don't even know if you can hear that. Just brushing the string. And this is going to give a really nice amount of space for you to get louder. And so our crescendo and decrescendo is going to be more effective. Let's try that again. So I'll count it in with a bit of a conductor's count in. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. So how was that for you? Was that a bigger gradation between, a bit more distance, you know, what they say, higher peaks and lower valleys? Now, the real challenge I find in crescendo, decrescendo in general is the gradient. You know, you've seen a gradient in color where it goes from black to white and then there's sort of a grays, but it's very even. Like if a computer made it in Photoshop, it'd be a very even gradient across to the new color. However, it's very difficult for us to, let's say we've got, in this case, 8 notes to go up, to make each one incrementally louder, 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 louder. That's really challenging, and that's asking your thumb, in this case, to be very dexterous and get a little bit louder, a little bit louder, a little bit louder. So that's where I would suggest you pay your attention. And the most common thing is to suddenly have a jump somewhere. On the way down, it's usually this. Quick leap, gets very quiet very quickly, and then you've got no more room to get softer. Likewise on the way up, by the 3rd and 4th note, you're already forte, so you don't have any room to grow. So that gradation is something to practice. Let's try it again together. Starting pianissimo, and then going to fortissimo. 1, 2, 3, 4. How to go with that one? I was happy with that, except the last 2 notes kind of had a bit of a drop. One last thing I'll leave you with on crescendo, decrescendo is it's sometimes useful to map out your starting point and your finishing point. Can you see my hands? Starting point and finishing point. So let's say the starting point is this. So everyone play their pianissimo, triple P. And now play a fortissimo on the high G. What is your fortissimo? If you haven't defined that, then there's really nowhere to aim towards, right? A fortissimo, I like to kind of go to the point where the guitar distorts a little bit. Maybe gets, sorry if this blows out your speakers a little bit. Like that's a harsh sound that maybe buzzes the guitar a little bit. So maybe you want to back off a little bit, but now we've found our 2 points, right? So pianissimo, and then maybe that's too much. Probably that's like a triple F. That's a strong forte there. So then we can try and match those 2 points in between. So something for you to work on with crescendo, decrescendo. By the way, all these Italian tones, Nicoletta Todesco, the maestra, is in the chat here, and we did a very fun podcast at her wedding, no less, where we coerced some of her Italian colleagues to say these Italian terminologies. It's in the podcast, It's a very fun one where we got Italians to say these terminologies and myself, well, Americans actually, for people from the United States to say it, and it's just a bit of fun. But saying all these words is reminding me of that podcast. If anyone knows the number of that podcast, maybe you can throw it in the chat. But I don't know it off the top of my head. Now, staccato. Staccato means detached. And we are often working for connected notes, legato on the classical guitar. That's something we strive for. It's actually something that's rather difficult. But staccato is where we detach them. I like to think, let's say, legato notes might be bricks that build a house end to end to end to end, right? They connect. There is a little bit of a division between them, but not very much. Now, staccato, detached, could be tennis balls in a row. Tennis ball, tennis ball, tennis ball, tennis ball. There's space in between those. So bop, 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 instead of ba, 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 ba. Now, staccato can be done a number of ways. It can be done in the left hand and the right hand. And in the right hand, it gets a little tricky with I and M, especially when crossing strings. But in the thumb is absolutely an excellent exponent of staccato. It can really come back to the string very quickly. And for those who are a bit more advanced, you can actually play around with how much detachment there is between each note. You can think of it rhythmically. This is an advanced concept, so if this is sort of sounding very difficult to you all of a sudden, don't worry about it. But you can be rhythmic. So let's say we're thinking of sixteenths. So I might hold the note for 3/16 and then stop it for 1. Now let's try 2/16, so essentially an eighth note. Or let's make it really short and just do 1/16. They're all staccato, but they're different and they sound different. And of course, in music, what we want is an effect, right? Very playful, very characterful. Maybe a bit more steady and plodding. You can play around with it. It's like brushes to a painter. So, it's really crafting different ways of making sound, and therefore we can make different things in the music. But what I would like to do and start our practice with is we're going to do our G major scale with a thumb, and we're going to do staccato. We're going to stop the same note on the other beats. I'll be counting 1, 2, 3, 4. So on 1 we'll play, 2 we'll stop. Like that. And it's the beginnings of your ability to control articulation with the thumb, training it to come back down to the string, and it will prepare you in good stead for bass stopping, which is a bit more of an intermediate advanced technique. Okay, so playing on the odd numbers and stopping on the even numbers. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, stop. 3, stop. Stop. Now let's try, for those who feel very confident with it, let's do a little faster. So we're basically going to do it on each beat now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, for those of you who are advanced, one problem that does arise is that when you cross strings, you can get the other string resonating over the two, right? So what I do is I use a mix of left hand and right hand technique. So the left hand staccato, where we just lift up the left hand finger, might be useful. Also, that's usually on the way down. But on the way up, we can actually just tilt the thumb a little bit out of position, touching the adjacent string. When we play the strings, so playing the 5th string, and I'm just lightly touching the 6th. So let's hear that's ringing. And I play the 5th string and I touch it. It's going a little bit off a tangent here, but that is a really nice way to control the articulation of staccato and the resonances of the other notes. So that is staccato. Now, let's jump in for a moment, and we're getting to the end, by the way. That's nice. It's been 30 minutes in, so we're getting to the end. We're going to deal with the arpeggio. Nikki's in the chat, so I feel like I really have to lift my game with Italian pronunciation. So the arpeggio, remember how I said at the beginning we're doing it in second position and each finger gets a fret? Well, in this case, we're going to break that rule. Let's start. Everybody together playing the G, second finger. That is the tonic. I'm going to play the third degree of the scale, which is the B. Let's play the B with the first finger. Now I want you to lift, pivot. You're going to pivot on that first finger. It's going to stay down. We're going to move stretch out our finger. It's quite a stretch maybe, to the D. Oops. On the fifth string, that's the D. That's the dominant. And then finally, we're going to use our fourth finger for the G on the fifth fret. Let's go back down, starting on the G, and then third finger right next to it on the fifth fret. Stretch that first finger. It's usually easier on the way down. Then second finger here on the G. Have a look how fluid you can get it. I know some of you might find that, oh, there's a lot of stretching and I'm having to drop my shoulder and things. But actually, once you really feel a bit more confident, you can keep it more or less in the hand with a little bit of rotation of the wrist. Let's try it together. Just one note per beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. And with arpeggios, we can sometimes hold our fingers down to let the notes ring over one another because it's a chord. But again, if you wanted to make it staccato, we would detach it. Lots of things we can build. Now, let's just do, to wrap that all together, and then I have one final, more advanced challenge. Let's wrap that all together with a scale going up and down, and then an arpeggio. Often, the arpeggios are played with a triplet. It sounds like this. Now, that's what we're going to do, and if it's we won't do it that fast, but it's nice as a triplet because it's called a triad, 3 notes. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Just really nice rhythmic pattern there. So we will do a triplet, but if it's a little fast, you can perhaps work on it in your own time. So altogether, G major scale up and down, and then once we get to back to the tonic, the G, we will do an arpeggio. Talking too much. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. It's quite quick. You can have a work on that in your own time. I do see a lot of questions coming in, by the way, and I will get to that at the end. I'm thinking a little bit this time of people watching the replay. So, lastly, maybe it's a little bit, I might just do one of them. So this is a really useful scale practice approach to learning dotted rhythms. Now, dotted rhythms sound like this. In this case, long, short, long, short, long. The notation value would be a dotted 8th note followed by a 16th note. Bum, 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 bum. It's a very characterful rhythm. It's a very good rhythm, and when played well, it has a particular feel, but when played slightly off, it loses that. And what often happens is we turn it into triplets. More of a kind of swinging feel. So we want to make sure that those dotted notes are right in place. And I have a very easy way for you to do this. This is called subdivision. I'm not going to go into it too much, but just follow along. I'll play what it sounds like first. Easier to play than tell you about it. Easy, right? We're going 1, 2, 3 on the first note. So that counts the full length of that dotted eighth note. Then just one quick note on the next. I think once you play through it a couple of times, you'll get it. Let's do it together. 2, 3, 4. Now let's do it one more time because the end result is important. 3, 4, E, and Now, what we want to use that for is a mental map, mental grid, mental matrix to make our dotted rhythms really nice and exact. So imagine those notes were still being played, but instead play. So what I'm doing is I'm subdividing, I'm imagining those other notes that I added in before, which now are absent. I'm imagining those in between, and it really steadies up the rhythm. So let's do it together. 3, 4, E, and All right, so that's the end of the scale workshop. I hope you found that useful. I don't want to, these things we can really dive in more and more about it, but I would like to leave it there. Hopefully you found that useful. I really do believe that practicing fundamentals improves our skills, all of us. Now, so that's kind of a wrap for this. This is really, as many of you know, I want to serve our guitar community as best I can all the time, but in this strange and unusual time, I think it's important to offer opportunities to come together, do something together, and just give ourselves a musical focus, because music is healing, and we all have a shared love for it. So I think it's really important. I'll be doing more of these. I'll be doing more interviews, and I do think, I hope you enjoy it. So let me ask if you have any questions. This probably, if I do put something, I'll probably put this inside the Academy, and I'll chop off this last bit because it won't be particularly relevant to the video. But please send in some questions if you have them. Yes, I did see Insidia 85 tab books. We do have a tab version of the repertoire book, but not yet the technical routines. One constriction is it basically doubles the size of these books. And also we have some other projects. We have 4 books on the boil at the moment. And so we just have to prioritize what other people, what we've been working on. So tab, yes, probably in the future, but just not right now, unfortunately. We can only do so much, right? We can all just put one foot in front of the other. So thank you so much, everyone, for chatting away and coming and joining me. I'm just going through the comments here to see if there are any questions in here. So Evita is in there. That's my wife. I'm very lucky to be spending this time with her. We actually just got to enjoy a nice weather day here in New York City, which she was supposed to be in South Africa. So, there's always a silver lining, right? And Nicoletta, our wonderful colleague from Classical Guitar Corner, is in there. And I saw Dave Belcher came and said hello. Miss Kerry Conroy, thank you so much for being here. Kerry's a fantastic guitarist. Ko Kazama. Hello, Ko. Ko's down in Miami. I hope you're doing well. Well, actually, are you down in Miami? Maybe you're back in New York City. Ko is a fantastic guitarist, and he's teaching down in Miami now. He just recently got a job. I think it's the University of Miami, but please, Co, if you want to correct me on that, please do. Ron Levine said that that the consistency of tone is not so easy on a piano either. Yes, I shouldn't have made such a throwaway comment about it being easier because of the mechanics. It absolutely is. I think especially on the higher end of piano playing, we get tone, colors, and articulations, and the touch. Absolutely. Daniel Abdul Nabi is saying this. That's really hard. Some of these things can be definitely challenging. So it's nice to work on some specifics. So let me have a look. Have I ever used a decibel meter on the dynamics? No, I don't have a decibel meter, to be honest. But dynamics, in my opinion, the end result is a musical one. You want it to elicit something out of the listener or convey something in the music. So, there's a wonderful story by Ben Verdery, who many of you know. He talks about a concert where he played Cordoba, a wonderful piece that's arranged for classical guitar by Isaac Albéniz. And at the end, it's often arranged in D minor. At the end, there's this beautiful D minor chord. And, sometimes we just have mental blanks. And he tells this story about right at the end, it was a wonderful performance. And right at the end, he looks at his guitar and he for the life of him, he doesn't know where the 10th fret is. He just sort of looks, he looks at the instrument. It's vanished, It's sort of, that happens to us sometimes. Our minds do amazing things. And so what he did, he airbrushed the guitar. He sort of didn't actually touch the strings and made that, the playing face of, oh, it's beautiful. And he said that people came up to him afterwards and said, the whole concert was great, but the ending of Cordoba was spectacular. So my point there is that we're often illusion artists on the classical guitar, in that it's not decibels we're creating, it's the shape, it's the effect of the music. And I can see some use of, maybe because it might benchmark certain things, but I've never used that. A little more on Ron's comment. You have to be careful with staccato such that you don't reduce the note to a smaller value. Yeah, well, yeah. I.e., don't make a quarter note sound like an eighth note. It's an interesting comment. So, why wouldn't someone write, let's say we've got eighth notes, right? Quarter notes, just 1, 2, 3, 4. And instead we play bop, 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 bop. That's staccato. But you could argue that's also just, why wouldn't you just write eighth notes? And sometimes people do. They will write an eighth note with an eighth note rest. Eighth note rest. So you're almost being more explicit about it. And the result, is it the same? It depends, because you might consider one to be a bit more rigid, on, off, on, off. But if you do left-hand staccato, the detachment is actually a little sort of softer. So I hear that as pom, 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 whereas right-hand staccato, well, it's very short. There's kind of a much more cube-like attack to it. If one's spheres and one's cubes, they're still detached, but they have a different kind of cut to it. So yes, I mean, why wouldn't you write dotted eighth note, 16th note rest, dotted eighth note? I think one aspect is it's difficult to write that in engraving and notation. I think another aspect is people just have different writing styles with music. But it's one of those things in music, you could say, well, couldn't you just write it this way? And both would be correct to a certain degree. But I think staccato has a certain feel to it as well that's a little different than just a rhythmic with a rest. Do you have any thoughts on beginning pieces to learn? Well, absolutely. We spend a lot of time choosing our pieces the way they're graded. And we do have a book called Graded Repertoire for Classical Guitar, And those pieces are chosen very specifically because they introduce different techniques in a certain order that has been very useful for many people. It's not the order at all. Other places you can find material like that is the Royal Conservatory grade books. There's also grade, the AMEB in Australia has those kind of books. The Royal College in England, the Trinity, Guildhall Trinity has those kind of books. And they also have syllabi that list out those kind of pieces. So that can be a good resource. But do you have any thoughts on beginning pieces to learn? That's, in terms of asking for you specifically, I hesitate to answer because that's a broad potential scope. You know, you could be a beginner that's just picked up the guitar, or it could be a beginner that's been playing for 2 years, and the answers can be completely different for each person. But have a look at those pieces. Hi, Co. Just saw your hi, Simon. What guitar is that hanging on the wall behind me? That is a guitar-lele. That is a little instrument made by Yamaha. It's small like a ukulele, but it has 6 strings and is sort of tuned up like a guitar. And I take it traveling, and it's also just a cute, fun little instrument. They're about $100, and you know, it's not a toy. They're well tuned. They sound good. So really fun little instrument. Dave said goodbye. Good night, Dave. So Co saying New World School of the Arts in Miami College and University of Florida. Great. Am I taking requests on doing a quick jam on the root and 7th? That's a pretty play of tension and resolution. Would be great to hear spontaneous improv on those 2 notes. Okay, I think I know what you mean. Quick jam on those 2 notes. I mean, you know, those 2 notes, we've got the root note. So we're still in the key of G. That will be found in certain chords. You know, you've got that, the 1, the 3. No, that's a 6. What am I talking about? G, brain. So I guess 1 and 6. What else is it in? 1, 6. Oh, and 4. Sorry. Okay, so you're going to find that note, the G, which is the tonic, in 1, 4, and 6, and you're going to find the leading tone in 1 and 5. So yeah, sorry, you're going to find it in my brain. I'm starting to get a little tired. You're going to find it in the 5. You're going to find it in diminished 7, and I suppose 2. 3, right? 3, 5, 7. Yeah. 3 is B. Oh yeah. But it's not going to be the. Oh yes, the B minor. Yeah. Sorry. This is. Thank you. I appreciate the question, but it's testing my brain right now. So you find in those chords, so you could sort of argue that you could do something like. I'll do a sort of simple arpeggio. I mean, I'm using it there in the melody a little bit, but really I'm sort of feeding it through the harmonies and things like that. Otherwise, you could do things like you could put it in the bass. That could be interesting. So. So that's actually, I'm putting the, you could hear it, and I went to, this is actually a D major chord, but I'm putting the F sharp in the bass. It's called an inversion first, inversion. So Kerry, hopefully that ticks the box for a little bit of an improv there on the tonic and the leading tone. Thank you, that was fun. Hannah's, it's well past midnight for her, so she's going to bed. Good night, Hannah, sleep well. Yeah, Ron sort of saying, you know, the scores can get muddy. Ron, well, we start in the grade books with the first 3 pieces from Saw's Opus 60, which is, you know, I always thought Opus 59 was his last opus, but Opus 60, at any rate, is the last opus number. I'm getting tired. I can feel a pizza and a beer in my future. In fact, I know it's in my future. But yes, the Opus 60 is definitely at the end of his life. That's what I wanted to say. And I really appreciate that he, at the end of his life, or end of his career, he took a focus on creating materials just for beginners. I think that's amazing. So it's really well thought out. And the great thing about Fernando Saw is he takes care of voice leading. So if we're talking about, you know, not throwing notes away in chord arpeggiations. And you would appreciate that as a pianist, because composers on the piano often, he's at that level. He's at the level that you probably are accustomed to. So those first 3 pieces would be a good start. In fact, that opus in general is a really great piece. Yes, Evita's saying hasn't eaten dinner yet. It's cooking now. Great, thank you. Dora asks, what scales should one practice to achieve the left-hand momentum that you are displaying? The funny thing about scales is, I mean, it's good to practice a variety of scales because that brings you into contact with different key centers. You know, F major is going to be different to G major because of different shapes. You're not getting locked into shapes. It's good to practice them. On one string, it's good to practice over different octaves. Or because that teaches you shifting. So there are different technical elements that come into certain scales, but G major compared to G sharp major doesn't get you many more returns. It does on something like the piano or a woodwind instrument, but on the guitar we have the blessing and a curse of scale shapes. I might do a whole session on the caged system, but that's a whole nother discussion. Anyway, I would suggest G major is a really nice scale. We're going to keep going in some other sessions in the 2 octaves. It's really nice because it sits nicely in the hand. You know, I guess it could be A major could be nice if you're either a beginner or have, you know, more a challenge stretching your fingers, or even up here, you know, you get a smaller stretch on the guitar. So that 2 octave scale, so G major 2 octave, I would recommend. C major was a nice one to start off with, some of the open scales using open strings. And then, you know, I think chromatic scales are great, but also in octaves. And then, of course, shifting scales. Ones that move around the guitar. So, all right, I think I might wrap it up there. My brain is starting to melt just a little bit. And you're probably getting a little tired of my voice. But thank you so much for tuning in on a Friday night. I hope this has been entertaining, if not entertaining, educational, if not educational, a distraction from everything else. But thank you. And like I said, if any of you are not on the email list, so I'm mailed out to a lot of people before just about this, but do go to classicalguitarcorner.com/live, LIVE, so that you get notified about these sessions before they go live. I don't really have any other better way to notify you. Evita's saying time to eat, she's in the other room. And also subscribe to YouTube, because I think that also notifies you. So stay safe, be healthy, be well. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.